Hi friends, my name is Diane. Thank you for joining me for creating Impressionist landscape textures in chalk pastel. I'm very excited to get started, so let's hit it. So before we get into the actual drawing, I'm just going to walk you through the materials we're going to need for this class. We're going to be copying a small section, the sun part and a little bit of the field of this painting. It is by Vincent van Gogh. Title is The Sower. This is actually a detail of that painting. It was painted in 1888 in oil on canvas. So what you'll want to do is search for this on the internet and print out a copy for yourself, preferably on photo paper so that you can see the richness of the colors. Photo paper is just better for that. But if you only have copy paper, that will work fine too. Or you could even look at it on your phone. Some people choose to do that. It's just harder to match the colors that way. Anyway, have a printout of that. You'll want a piece of paper to draw on, an eraser and a pencil to draw with, a rag or cloth or just old pants you don't mind wiping your hand on because your hand's going to get kind of dirty, and your chalk pastels. I have a set of 96 here. You don't need a set that big, but if you're pretty serious about getting into chalk pastel, I recommend having a nice big set because it's just more fun and easy. But if you only have a set of 24, 36, 48, whatever, that's fine. There's tons of brands out there, tons of beautiful products. Just get whatever you desire to have in your toolbox. And if you don't happen to have the exact same color that I have, for example, if I'm doing a yellowy green and you only have a yellow and a green, mix your yellow and your green together, put a little yellow down first, put a little green on top of it, dab or rub to blend. Or you could use the pastel itself to kind of rub them together. And we'll be doing a lot of that as we go, so you'll see what that looks like. So without further ado, let's get on to the drawing. So grab your pencil, and all we're going to do is draw a mostly complete circle and a couple of lines, one for the top, one for the edge where the kind of dark part of the wheat or whatever that is meets the light part, and one for the bottom edge. So it's very straightforward. So you could start by just drawing a circle. It doesn't even have to be full. It can be as big or as little as you want. Something like that. You can adjust it as you need to. And then a line and another line. I'll make it about that far down. That's for the top lighter part of the wheat field. The bottom part is a little shorter, it looks like. And then this acts as the barrier between the orange and the blue as well. So that's all you need to do. Draw very lightly. If you didn't happen to have drawn very lightly, just go back and lightly erase your pencil lines, particularly around the sun, because you don't want that pencil line to show through. And the reason the sun is the most important to have a light line is because it's the lightest color in this picture, whereas these darker colors will easily cover up pencil lines in general. But a pencil line will show through easily a light yellow or a white in chalk pastel. So make sure it's just very light. So we're just going to start with our basic color for the sun and the sky, which is a light yellow. If you happen to have a really vibrant dark yellow or bright yellow, I would put white over the sky first and then the yellow on, just to make sure it doesn't go on too intensely. Also, if you've used your pastels before, if they're not brand new, they might be a little dirty. Mine has a little green on it. So you can just kind of rub it on the side of your paper or wipe it off on your cloth to make sure it's clean before you apply it to your sky. And then I'm going to color in the sun in circular motion. Even though we're not concerned about strokes at all at this point, it's always great to just from the very beginning of your picture, paint or draw or color in the direction you see going on in your picture, because every time you do that, you're not only informing your muscle memory for your own self to do the same thing layer upon layer, but you're kind of creating a roadmap for the rest of your picture. So for the rays of the sun, I'm using the same color, but I'm going out away from the sun in the way sun rays do for the same reason. And you can see I'm not being completely thorough with it. It's just a base coat. But I was very thorough with the sun. I made that very dense because the sun is unabashedly yellow, whereas the sky has a lot of other colors layered into it. You'll see a lot of dust created from any pastel coloring you do. So you can either take it off to the side and dump it in the garbage if you're inside and have a garbage can, or you can blow it off with your breath. And then we're just going to use our finger and go around and rub the color. And this just kind of evens it out and gives us a nice, thorough base coat. And then your finger is going to be dirty, so you can just wipe it off. We'll do the same thing for the next couple sections. So for the wheat field thing, I keep calling it wheat. I really don't know what that is. I'm going to just keep calling it wheat. It's easier. I think I'll use kind of a, yeah, I'm just trying to pick the main color I see. This kind of golden brown is good. And I just broke my own rule and started coloring sideways because it's easier. But this wheat field is growing up and down. So I'm going to do this. And actually I'll do the bottom too, because this is a good main color for both of those. Not being too concerned if I happen to go a little too high into the sun or a little low into the ground below the pencil line, because the field itself is very uneven. So that's actually a nice effect. And then lots of dust there too. So I'm going to just dump that into the garbage. Don't need these anymore. I'm going to get them out of the way. And I'll blend that. Blending, by the way, or rubbing with something this layered is pretty optional. Like, I really don't have to do that. I'm just sort of doing it out of habit, because with chalk pastel, I like to put a color down and then make sure the paper is entirely covered up before I move on. For the bottom part, that's a little trickier. I think because there's so many colors involved here, blue is the obvious one. I'm going to do... I don't want to do blue as my base because I feel like it'll be too blue. I'm going to do gray instead, because blue is dominant. So putting blue over gray, you can put as much as you want. You can cover up all the gray and it'll be fine. But to have that as a first color, it's really difficult to put a lighter color over it and make it show up. So I'm going to start with the lighter color, gray, and go sideways this time because that's the direction those lines are headed. And that's just a very light gray, because the gray I see in the field is very light. It's almost whitish. And I'll rub that and wipe my finger off. So that's our base coat. Now we're going to have fun. So we're going to go back with tons of colors and put in all this amazing, beautiful texture. So I'm going to start with a slightly darker yellow than I had in the sun, but it's lighter than the wheat field. And I'm just going to put some little dabs of it into the sun because there is some texture there. It looks like just brush stroke stuff, but also, you know, he probably had a little bit of leftover from the sky or the field in his brush when he dabbed it into that sun. So it makes it look really chunky and organic and lovely. So I'm doing that. And then I'm going to start putting lots of lines using the flat side of the pastel so that they're chunky and thick. I don't want fine, thin lines. And you can see this barely shows up, but it's just the first color I'm putting in. And I'm generally going to layer from light to dark because it's just easier to do that. If you go from dark to light or jump around, then you have your darks in first. It's kind of hard to put lights in on top of darks. You're always fighting the darks. So it's just easier to go light to dark. I also happen to have gotten my yellow pastel into the wheat field a little bit, which will create these little bits of orange, which is very nice because we're going to have a lot of orange in the sky anyway. So I did that, and now I'm going to take the same color. I'm just going to try it in here and see if it shows up a little bit. So I'll put a few dabs of that into the wheat field as well. And because in a painting, or actually in anything, something will always have the reflection of the thing right next to it, I'm going to take this and put a little bit of it into the gray as well, just to warm it up and make the sun's beautiful rays hit that field. And I'll wipe it off and put that one away. And now I'm going to go a hair darker and just do a little bit of this kind of bright orange. Oops, there's green on there. Better get that off. I just won't use that side. So maybe I'll use the other side. That's a brand new edge, so it needs a little breaking in. Sometimes with chalk pastel, if you have an older set, as I do, If they sit in the case for a long time and you, especially if you've never used an end, like I've never used this end, might get a bit of a shininess on it, which you really have to press hard to break through. It's almost like it's formed a skin or something over the years. Or maybe it was always like that, but chances are it's just age. Anyway, another solution to that is you could break a piece off and use the fresh part if you ever have that problem. So I've got lots of rays in there. I'm going to put a few into the middle of the sun for the same reason I talked about before. And let me see what this does over the field. That doesn't really show up either, but what the heck. A little bit in there, a little bit in here. And we'll just keep going darker and darker. So next I'm going to get some of the same color I used for the wheat, the base color, and put that into the sky. And you can see that's really showing up. So just tons of little lines emanating from the sun. Imagine they're coming from a central point in the sun, and whatever direction you're going, you want them pointing out. I didn't do a very good job there, but that's okay. It's all very loose. It's probably better to plant it in where the sun is and pull out, but you can also kind of go the other direction because his strokes are very short and chunky. They don't have a lot of wisp to them or finesse. A little bit of an edge around the sun too, almost an outline, not necessarily in this color, but this will lay the groundwork for it. It's like a darker reddish rusty color. That's not going to show up there at all because I've already got that color on there. So I'll put a few marks into the ground, again using the wide side of the pastel. And now I'm going to go into this rusty red. This is going to be fun. So I'm going to use the edge, the corner, to kind of outline the sun a little bit, just on the right side here, and then whoops, and pull out some lines from that. So I'm planting my pastel into that line and just pulling out into the sky, pressing fairly hard so that they show up nicely. And don't worry if it feels like you put too much, because you can always go back with the lighter colors and do another layer of light, which will help the darker colors to kind of meld into the sky and marry with the lights. And we're going to do that as well as soon as we're done putting these in. So I've got something like that. I'm going to put some little dabs of that into the sun. And those are too dark, but again, I'm going to go back over those with the yellow at some point. I'm going to go out a little further here. We've got that. And I feel like it needs to be golder, more of a yellowy orange. So I'm going to go back in with some of this yellowy orange color. And this counts as a lighter color than the red that I just put in, of course, so I can use this as a blender. So see what happens when I put my pastel over the reds is they soften and smear a little bit, which is a really nice effect, especially if you've made very distinct chunks to create an impressionist sort of look. Move that out of the way. Yeah, that's really getting the sky nice and gold. So that's exactly what I was hoping to do. Blowing the dust off as I go. There wasn't that much, so I chose not to dump it in the trash. Just blew it off. There's a little bit more of an distinct edge to the sun over here, so I'm actually going to color in the direction of the circle to redefine that, and then pull out from that circle into the sky. Oh, and I got a little carried away. I forgot to put the red into the field. There's quite a bit of it, especially on the lower part where it's darker. So this is where you're going to start seeing more separation between the darker part and the lighter part. So I'm just going to make a bunch of really thick, not super straight, sort of wiggly, but not really, lines in the base there. And then some dabs of it up here. Pretty random, some clumped together, some not. Definitely don't want them evenly spaced. And I guess I should give this part some love too. So I'm going to go in with a blue now, just a dark blue. And this will really show up because I'm now putting it over very light colors. And I'm using the wide side and trying to make sort of wiggly strokes, because those are, well, they're a little wiggly, for lack of a better description. So I'm sort of just filling in most of the gray space that I colored earlier, going around the yellows as much as I can, but definitely not being too careful about that. I want some of the blue to match up with the yellow or meet up with the yellow. Something like that. And then we're going to get a little bit of a greenish color into the sky. You can see little bits of green here. So I just picked kind of a main green, and I'm just going to put some little dabs of it going sort of everywhere. I'm going to do a couple different greens. This is a darker one. There isn't a whole lot of green, but it's definitely there. It's just sort of adding texture and personality to the sun's rays. And I'm going to do some yellowy green as well. This one is going to be much more subtle. May not even be able to see it. I can see it a little bit. It's worth putting in. It adds variation. So I'm kind of using the light green to blend my dark greens a little bit by purposely trying to go over the dark greens, but I'm also adding some extra light greens so that they have a voice of their own. Get all that dust off. Not really seeing much green in any green in the field, so I'm going to leave that alone. Now, oh, you know what? I need to put some gold up here too, more gold. So I'm using this mainly as a blending tool for the reds, but also to just warm up this section. Since it's right under the sun, I want it to be very sunny and bright, have a glow about it. So I'm really pressing hard and just making several thick strokes. By thick, I mean using the wide side of the pastel, not the skinny side. And then I'll do a little bit down here. But I'm also going to switch now to this kind of olive green to add to down here, partially to darken, but also just to get a presence of green in there, because there is a presence of green. It helps it to look more in shadow from the sun, because that's what this section is. And now I'm going to use that same orangey gold color to blend this. And it's not really going to show up as orangey gold because I'm putting it over a much darker section, but it's a terrific blender. Rather than using my finger, which would just smear all this out, this keeps all the texture and it keeps the richness of color, which is what I'm going for. And my top edge is actually much sharper than this one, so I'm going to go over that top edge a little bit and just dab at it to camouflage it somewhat. And by contrast, my top edge here is not as distinct as it is here. So I want to brighten up my sky a bit. And to do that, I'm going to add some white. Or this isn't white, it's ivory. It's like an off-white. But there's whites in the sky anyway, so we need to do that. So I'm going to start by putting just bits of white in. Again, emanating from that imaginary point in the center of the sun out, so that they're all appearing to come out from the sun. And I'm going to go a little crazier with the white right around the horizon line so that the sky separates from the wheat field a little bit more. Even though it's going to look funky for just a minute, we're doing this to lighten all these colors, and then we're going to add more of the yellow so that it doesn't look chalky. Pardon the pun, because we're using chalk pastels. Get it? And I've obviously kind of messed up my edge of the sun. That's totally fine too. I'll go back and fix that. And now I've got the color where I want it, but I've lost a lot of my texture down here. So I can go back and retexturize that. I'm going to add some actual orange now, because the yellow orange won't compete enough with this color. It's too similar. So the orange will add some texture back and kind of get rid of the chalkiness a little bit. And then I'm going to fix up this edge. So I'm going to start by seeing if the yellow is enough. Whoops, it was dirty. See, that's what happens. Didn't clean it off. Is the yellow enough if I press hard to just reshape that sun? And yeah, that worked well. The other option, if it wasn't enough, would be to go back and erase some just with your pencil eraser and then put more yellow in. But that seems to have shaped it very nicely. And something I hadn't done yet was go back with the yellow and color over these red bits to give them a little smeary effect. And then I want to also kind of smear around the inside edge of the sun in that red part. All right, so I'm pretty happy with those. I'll go back to them in a minute, but I want to go back to the field, the blue part, which I have been sort of neglecting as I bounce back and forth between these two. So I'm going to go in with a purpley color, like a dark purple. This is way too dark, but I'm just putting I'm not pressing hard. I'm just putting little light dabs of it over some of the blues, not all, to give it a little bit of a purple suggestion. It's definitely not purple, but it's a purplier blue than it is like greenish or anything. And now I'm going to go back with kind of a light, if I can get it out of the case, ivory color. Come on. There we go. And go in and make little tiny strokes. And I'm just using the corner of the pastel now. And you can see it's sort of blending a little bit and even creating new blue strokes because I'm putting a very light color into a dark color, so it gets the blue on the ivory, and then when I plant it down again you have blue on it, and I'm using that to my advantage here. It creates more cohesive texture in this section of the painting. So I'm pretty happy with that, although I feel like the bottom edge of the field isn't really sitting down on the blue part. So how can I fix that? I'm going to go back with this avocado color and literally put a line, kind of a sketchy line at the base, and then pull lines up from that avocado color into the bottom of the field. And that'll help it to look like it's really, like there isn't a holiday of paper showing through there, like it's really sitting down. And then I kind of dominated the red with that avocado color, so I'm going to go back and put some of the rest back in. Very lightly, just enough to get the color to come back. So you can see this really is quite a process of layering. Now, I'm just going to kind of look at it and ask myself, what else do I want to do? You do the same thing. Look around at your picture and see what else you could do to make it more like this, or just make yourself happier with it if you're not super happy with it. I would like to add some more kind of orange color around the outside edge of the sun. And a little bit more white, the ivory. Just a few more dabs to get it more lively there. And then I feel like a little bit more of this straw color, which isn't, that's not even really showing up, so that's not going to help. I just want a little bit more texture. So let me try this darker orange. There we go. That's showing up better. A little more texture at the bottom of the sky. And I'm going, even though that's where I wanted the texture, I'm just putting a little more orange all the way around so that it looks cohesive. Blow off the dust, and my shape got a little bit off there. So I'm going to go back with the rust red color and kind of carefully just cut off this cornery part of the sun that I didn't intend to put in there. And then I'll use the yellow to blend it a little bit. So you go ahead and just noodle it to your heart's content. Make any changes you want, erase, re-add, try it again if you'd like. Just keep playing with it until you're happy. And I hope you've gotten something out of this Impressionist landscape textures in pastel class. Please do offer a rating or review. It will help other people find the class, help me learn how to teach better, and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this, because there's lots more to come. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful rest of your day.